Camera on. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another social emotional workshop. We are with CARE of Southeastern Michigan. Joe and Teresa are back. Welcome, you guys. Today, they are going to be talking about tobacco and vaping and the effects that it has on your body. You guys, welcome. We're so glad to have you back.
Thank you, Tony. All right, well, let's get right into it. The acronym that you see is ENDS, E-N-D-S, that stands for Electronic Nicotine Delivery Systems. So you'll either hear it categorized as vaping, which is all pretty prevalent in our society, or when you're talking about the devices, they're going to talk about ENDS, those electronic nicotine delivery. Our overview, we're going to talk about the trends of usage, some adult trends as well as youth trends, and what motivates adults or youth to start vaping. A little bit about nicotine addiction, what it does to the brain, what it does to our whole kind of reward pathway. Identify the vape products. So you'll see some of the different styles, and you can't keep up with them. There are so many different styles and vape products that are coming out. There's no way to put them all in the PowerPoint, because next month they're going to have a whole new slew of different devices. Explore currently known data on some of the health concerns regarding vaping and THC. I'll touch on THC a little bit, but we have a separate training on marijuana. And then some of the resources for preventing and recovering from the tobacco use. So a little bit of data here. This is nation wide data. You see, this is cigarette smoking rates. So they have fallen pretty significantly among both youth and adults. And you see the youth in the purple and the adults in the green. But you can see back in 1970, man, over 40% of adults using. And we didn't have the youth data back then in the 70s and 80s. We just didn't take that data. They started taking that data here in 1990 when you see the youth use of cigarette smoking, 1990 into 25 all the way into the late 90s up into 36% using tobacco. And then you see that steep decline all the way into like 2020. Right now, we have the youth all the way down to single digits, 8.8% of youth smoking cigarettes. And then adults, that is quite low also, 14% of adults smoking combustible cigarettes. Now, this is more local. This is monitoring the future. This is cigarettes, again, combustible cigarettes. When I say combustible, it means you have to light them. So I'm not talking about the ends of the vape products yet. So you can see the green, 12th grade, in yellow, 10th grade, and red, 8th grade. So the 12th grade, we're up almost 30%, 25, probably 26% of youth, 12th graders using. But then all the way down, you see the steep decline all the way down, and the last is 2017 here with this study. But it was all the way down to that 8% or so. Pretty darn good on reducing cigarette usage in adults and in youth. And why was there such a reduction? It is all the prevention and intervention programs, from the research from health consequences, prevention education, kind of like what CARE does, CARE of Southeastern Michigan. We do a lot of prevention education in schools, media campaigns, with the people talking out of their throat, after throat cancer, and what's the one, Above the Influence. So there's a lot of media campaigns against cigarettes, cessation tools on how to quit smoking. So there's all kinds of ways to quit smoking. They have the patch and the lozenges and all kinds of, cold turkey and just ways to quit. Maybe another reason why people were quitting was the rising cost. I don't know what cigarettes are now, probably like $7, $6 or $7 a pack. So people are quitting because of the rising costs. Just raise the taxes, and maybe that's one of the reasons why they were quitting, or keeping youth off of it. So youth, it's too expensive for youth to use if they can't steal it from their parents or friends. And then the restrictive laws maybe helped out, with not being able to smoke in certain areas. And now we have that no public buildings. So a lot of effective prevention and intervention has reduced cigarette smoke. We've come a long way, baby, as they put it. But now, look at this. Now this is vaping. Percent of students reporting vaping in the past year. And this is 2017. But you see 12th graders in the green and 10th in the red and 10th in the yellow, and the 8th grade in the red. So 12th graders right back up to that high 30% that it was back in the 1990s with cigarettes. So we're right back where we started with this vape product that's coming out. And then the nicotine, you see it just above 20% here, just flavoring is about the same. But now the tobacco industry just changed their packaging, changed the way to smoke cigarettes. And now it's getting really popular again. So now we have to start all over. E-cigarettes ads threaten to reverse the progress. And these ads are advertising to youth with all the flavors and the coolness of it. And I really want to show you this video here to talk about the hype. And I probably have to minimize and reshare. I couldn't embed this in my PowerPoint for some weird reason. All right. Bear with me for just one moment here. Okay, I think I found it. Okay, here we go. And let me know if you can hear it. Thank you.
Yes.
In case you're new, everyone at my school, Jules.
Something that is literally sweeping the nation. Everywhere I go, it is a whole thing.
Yo, what is going on, guys? What's up, guys?
Today's video is gonna be a Juul sesh. We got the mango pod,
The cool cucumber, fruit medley.
I've got this creme pod because I thought it would be festive.
It tastes great.
Well, if you want a head rush, definitely the Juul.
That's really strong.
Oh god, bro, give me the biggest neck buzz.
Oh my god. The Juul challenge. You gotta hit this thing as many times as you can.
We're doing the Juul Hotbox Insane Nick Buzz Challenge, you dig?
I got some accessories.
Juul wraps.
Type in charging case for Juul.
Rolo bag.
Soaring drop.
Ghost stick.
this one is watermelon. It is literally so good.
Okay, quite the hype video that teens are enjoying. Let me get back on track here. Okay, so quite the hype video, and a teenager seeing that, it's just like the coolest, most in thing to do. It's getting a whole new generation addicted to nicotine. We're starting all over. So vaping, a youth epidemic. You can see back in 2011, 1.5% of high schoolers, but now 2019 all the way up to 27.5%. Middle schoolers back in 2011, almost 0.5% here, a little over 0.5%, and now in 2019, 10.5%. That's some pretty significant increases. This is interesting data on usage in Michigan, in county, and I highlighted the probably top 6. And let's see, Wayne County kind of low, because I do think this is kind of a socioeconomic too. I mean, this isn't like a, if somebody is having, is on the lower socioeconomic scale, they're not going to buy vape, they're going to buy cigarettes. It's cheaper. Vaping is a little bit more expensive product. Macomb County, 96% increase. Branch County, 109. I don't know what's going on in Branch County, but that's the highest. 103 in Charlevoix. But it's just interesting to see in geography on where the biggest increases in vape use is. Now, different markers like what is attractive to youth, the top reasons why youth use, and they mentioned friends or family members vape. They mentioned the flavors were very attractive, and the belief that it is less harmful than cigarettes was a big one. So they're believing that it is less harmful, and I'll talk a little bit about that. That once they said less harmful, the CDC says you can't say less harmful because there's no research on that. We don't know that it's less harmful than smoking cigarettes. They said it was a safer alternative. They can't say safer alternative. Less harmful, they really can't say it's less harmful. Let's put it this way. People who smoke cigarettes, combustible cigarettes, I'm sure you've known people who smoke for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and now they have maybe some heart disease, maybe some cancer, lung cancer, or other sorts of cancer. So that's after decades and decades of use. But these youth are smoking vape products, and within months, they're getting this lung disease. So can you say it's less harmful than cigarettes? I don't think you can actually say it's less harmful. There's a question out there. Deborah, you're unmuted to ask a question.
No, I was just amazed at the number of middle school students that are vaping. And my question would be, how are they so able to get these products in their hands if they're under the age of 18?
Well, recently they just passed some new laws where you have to be 21. But just where any other kid gets those illegal products, they either have older people buy it for them, either they take it out of their homes where it's easy access if it's in their homes, or they buy it themselves with stores that are selling to minors.
Yeah,
It is up.
It is way up.
Mm-hmm.
And I know people are saying things like, since the pandemic, people are more on edge, people are more susceptible of doing things out of the ordinary, but you're talking about 11, 12, and 13-year-olds.
Yeah. I have a friend that has that school age daughter, and she doesn't even want to go in the bathrooms because it's just so prevalent. They're just vaping in there, and they're really cracking down on it in schools. Before they were getting away with it quite a bit, but I think teachers and school districts are getting a little bit more wise and really putting a stop. But it's easily concealed. It's not smoke like smoking in the boys' room when we were younger, where you have that smell and you have that that cigarette. in the ash. And then these kids have these products that they can hold right in their hand. You can't even notice, and they just inhale it and blow it in their shirt, and it smells like candy.
Yeah, and they come in so many different forms now. You know, they got they look like ink pens, they look like highlighter markers. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, and we'll get to that in the presentation when you see the different types of vape products. So vaping, an adult concern. Adults who currently use e-cigarettes in 2018. You can see the age groups here, 18 to 24, that was the big one. 25 to 44, 45 to 60, 65 plus. So this is that youth problem.
Yeah.
So the adult top reasons for adults using, they believe it's less harmful than cigarettes. And they're using it as a cessation tool, saying that they're going to start vaping to get off of combustible cigarettes. Now, like I said, they believe it's less harmful, but they really can't prove it. There's not much research on e-cigarettes, on are they a healthier alternative? Are they less harmful? Because there's a lot of people getting sick. And I have some data about that lung disease that would happen back in the late 1990s. Right before the pandemic, there was that vaping lung disease. Now, a cessation tool, they're saying that adults that are using vape products as cessation tools, they're taking longer to quit because now they're using 2 tobacco products, and it is not a proven way to get off of combustible cigarettes. And I'll get into that in a minute, that it's not proven. That quote on the bottom, almost half of young adults, 18 to 24, current e-users, never smoked before trying an e-cigarette. So those children, those youth, would have never smoked cigarettes at all if the vape product didn't come out and be so attractive with the coolness of it and the flavors and all that advertisement to children. So fact or myth, vape product manufacturers prioritize customers' health and wellness. And obviously that is a myth because their priority is money. And this reality check of these quotes from Philip Morris back in 1972. The cigarette should not be construed as a product, but a package. The product is nicotine. Think of a puff of smoke as the vehicle for nicotine. And then the British American Tobacco Company said they just explicitly looking for a socially acceptable, addictive product that they can sell. And we're right back to, doctors. There's even doctors that are investing in vape products and saying that vape products are healthier, and they vape. So we're right back to that day one about those doctors saying they're healthier cigarettes. So here's that cessation tool. Odds of quitting cigarettes were 28% lower in those who use e-cigarettes compared to those who didn't use e-cigarettes. And this is because now they're using 2 tobacco products, and when they're not vaping, they'll be smoking. If they're not going to smoke, well then, or if they're in a building or something, then they can use their vape product. So now they're juggling those two tobacco products, and they're actually finding it harder to quit smoking. Now, some people I talked to people who actually used vaping to quit smoking, and they've been successful. And that's great. Now, with using a vape product to quit smoking, let me see if it's in here. No, it's not in here yet. Now, your brain gets used to a certain level of nicotine. So when you're smoking a cigarette and how often you're smoking, the brain gets used to that. So now if you get off of combustible cigarettes and now you're going to use a vape product, you're going to draw on that vape product more often to get to the level of nicotine that the brain is using. So now you're not smoking as much, but the cigarette smoke has a higher level of nicotine. So the vape product with a lower level of nicotine, you're just going to puff on it more often because the brain needs that level of nicotine. So let's talk about the nicotine addiction a bit. That craving, addiction is that craving that object, the loss of control over it, and the continued involvement despite the negative consequences. And I know so many people who smoke that know it's bad, that want to quit, but they just can't. So they have negative consequences of waking up in the morning with a smoker's cough. They have heart disease they're dealing with, and they just can't quit because of that addiction.
Joe, what
Yes.
causes craving? What causes the body to crave something?
That is, I think that's coming up right here. I think this slide will answer the question, which is whatever the body's addicted to. So it could be that prescription drug, it could be alcohol, it could be nicotine, could be caffeine, whatever it is. So let's look at this slide here. Nicotine or any other drug floods the reward pathway with dopamine. So now the brain gets used to that extra dopamine that the substitute is providing. So dopamine is our mood and behavior motivation, right? Dopamine makes us feel good and it makes us motivated to do that same thing again. So if it was exercise that I got dopamine from, my brain will say, oh, that exercise felt good, do it again. If I ate healthy food, brain said, even if I ate junk food, my brain will say, wow, that was good, do it again. So our brain is motivated to do what feels good over again. And a lot of times it was designed to keep our lives, like to eating. Sex, you get dopamine from sex. If we didn't get dopamine and sex didn't feel good, we wouldn't reproduce, right? We wouldn't, I don't even feel like it. And we wouldn't carry on as a human race. So this addiction here, nicotine addiction, disrupts the brain's regulation of this acetylcholine that takes care of our respiration, our heart rate, our memory, alertness, and muscle movements. These changes in the brain with the nicotine user feel abnormal when they're not using nicotine. So to answer your question, Tony, when I'm not under that dose of nicotine or other drug, my brain is saying, go and get that drug so I can feel good again. So that that loss of control, that need to use, is because the brain got used to that high doses of that, whatever your drug of choice is. Now, there are two types of addiction. There's psychological addiction, where it's just that compulsion to use, like a gambling addiction or holding a cigarette between your fingers. You just have to do that. And then the physical addiction is what this slide is talking about, where when you're not on the substance, you will shake, you will have a headache, you'll have some type of withdrawal from that substance. So let's look at this. Nicotine, stress, and coping. The flood of dopamine upon consuming nicotine provides that illusion of stress relief, right? So you have the short-lived euphoria from smoking. But then when you're done smoking, you are going into withdrawals. So you're left wrestling with the cravings and withdrawal symptoms constantly. Now you smoke a cigarette, you get your nicotine blast, but once that nicotine wears off, you need that cigarette again, or else this part of our bodies, this respiration, heart rate, memory, alertness, is out of sync. And you need that product to put you back in sync. That's where that addiction comes from. Now with a vape product, it's a little easier because you can do it indoors. So youth or adults who vape, they're going to vape more because they can pull it out of their pocket and get that dose of nicotine instantly. And then they go into withdrawals and they pull it out of their pocket and get that dose and go into withdrawals. So they're going from the dose to the withdrawal constantly through that day.
So Joe, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Going back to when you showed the high schoolers, the middle schoolers, so do you think they're doing this because their peers are doing it? Or is it a thing that you think is going to be long-term? Because my thing is, if they're starting vaping at middle school, by the time they get in high school, they might be using hardcore drugs. You understand what I'm saying? I mean,
Yes.
vaping was, that was just a thing for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Now I'm a 9th grader. Now I should start maybe smoking marijuana or popping pills or something like that.
Sure. And there is a correlation.
How do we combat that?
Yes. And to answer your first question was, are they doing it because of their peers are doing it or other people are doing it? Yes, they might use because of advertisement or that their friends are using. But the most addictive product, would you guess the most addictive product out of heroin, cocaine, methamphetamines, alcohol, nicotine? The most addictive product is nicotine, more addictive than heroin. That's how powerful nicotine is. So even if the youth start using because it looks cool and their peers are using, they're going to get hooked on that nicotine quick. It is the most addictive product that we have. And now, how do we get them off of, or it is a gateway drug. Once the brain gets used to that level, they might open the door to something that might stimulate the brain even more. So it is a gateway drug, as we hear, smoking to marijuana, to alcohol, to, pills. And there is that progression to go to the next level of drug. And at the end, I'll have some ways to combat that, to help children stay off of drugs and alcohol. So this is the e-liquid nicotine level chart. So even the no nicotine, when they say no nicotine, there could be nicotine in there. It says 0 here, but there could be a level of nicotine. So you saying it's just flavor, mom, it's just flavor, teacher, it's just flavoring. There could be like 0.03% nicotine in there. All they need is a little bit of nicotine to open that mind to say, this is good. So very low nicotine, you see the 3 milligrams here. And then here is a cigarette, similar to a regular strength cigarette, 18 milligrams. That's kind of a high level of nicotine. And then very high levels, you see 24 milligrams and 36 milligrams. You can't get that from a cigarette. You need the nicotine salts, which I'll talk about in a minute here. So the purest form of nicotine is free-base nicotine. That is the tobacco leaves. The combustible cigarette is the purest form of nicotine you can have. Now, back in the day, let me see something. So the higher levels of nicotine, the harsher it is on the lungs. So if you had free-base nicotine with 24 milligrams, 36 milligrams of nicotine in there, it'll burn your throat. So what Philip Morris did back in the 1960s, Philip Morris found you can manipulate the pH level of nicotine to provide more of a kick than previous cigarettes of the 1950s. So Philip Morris became the most, well, it was Marlboro, that became the most popular, I should say, addictive cigarette on the market, because they realized that you can manipulate the pH level to make it higher nicotine and less harsh on the throat. Now, on this chart, you'll see the combustible cigarette in orange here with the blood nicotine level of 25 nanograms. Now, the first vape juice that used to come out was in the blue, the traditional e-liquid, and the blue on the bottom wasn't anywhere near like smoking a cigarette, so it wasn't that popular. people that vaped didn't like it. They went straight back to the nicotine cigarette because they needed that nicotine, that 25 nanograms. So then they started getting a little bit better. The PAX labs were testing nicotine, and they got it up to the 7-8%. But then the PAX labs in this purple here, this commercial version, they started adding nicotine salts to that nicotine. They added benzoic acid. And the benzoic acid burned at a lower temperature, lowers the pH value for the smoker so it doesn't burn their throat. And the chemical reaction of this benzoic acid makes it more absorbable into the bloodstream. So now vape products are almost just like combustible cigarettes. They can even have more nicotine in them now than a combustible cigarette. So different package, same addiction, it may be even more dangerous. So let's look at the anatomy here. All vape products have the same thing. It has a LED light to let you know when it's on. It has the battery. Some have a button that you have to push to turn it on. Some of them are just draw. You inhale and it turns on automatically. The atomizer is the heating element. Then you have the flavor cartridge and the mouthpiece. So most products will have these components. The first generation, way back, I don't know, 10 years ago or maybe 12 years ago, I think they came out in like 2010. So these were the ones that looked like the cigarette. They were disposable e-cigarettes. That's when it was really low, that 5% nicotine. People didn't like them very much, but they were convenient. Then the second generation, these are the e-cigarettes with pre-filled or refillable cartridges. And that's when you see you can refill them here. Third generation is when you saw the tanks or mods. They call them mods because they're modifiable. You could change the components, thinner coils heat up faster, and you can do, I'll show you some things that you can do with the mods here. But the fourth generation that we see today, that's when you see these jewels and you see these things. These are all nicotine salts. These are the ones with that manipulated pH level where you can have extreme high, 36% THC or THC, nicotine in these products. So here's the jewels. And that's when you somebody mentioned that it could be right in your kid's pocket. They look like flash drives or something like that, or chargeable flash drives. These are most popular right now. The Posh, these are pre-filled, disposable, and these are really ruining our environment because these things are made of aluminum and plastic, and then they smoke them and they just throw them out. They gain popularity with youth because it's easy to use, it's really colorful and cool, and they could throw them out and don't have to have them on their person when they go home. The Smoke Nords, rechargeable, manually filled, shut off after 8 seconds of consistent activation so it doesn't burn up. These are the fourth generation, these Soren drops and these Soren airs. They're rechargeable, manually filled. Here's the mods. These are popular for the ones that have the smoke and the smoke contests and stuff. And you can change the heating element and you could mix the juices, and they have an extremely bigger battery. This last product here, IQOS, that stands for I Quit Ordinary Cigarettes. And this isn't a vape, well, it is a vape product, but it's vaping a cigarette. This is an actual cigarette, tobacco leaf cigarette, and there's a heating rod inside this tube. So you take that little short cigarette, they sell them in little short packs with 20 of 20 of them in there. And you shove that on into that heating stick. Then that heat stick will heat the leaf tobacco to a temperature where it will turn into vapor before it combusts. So it's just like smoking tobacco, but it doesn't combust. And here are some of those interesting ones that Deborah shared earlier about all the cool things that they can do with them and the looks. These are pre-filled, they're manually filled cartridges. You can fill them with nicotine, THC, CBD. The clears, you see the clear here, this is pretty much designed for high concentration THC oils. We'll talk about that in a moment. And then the Cree, these are kind of popular. They look like a compact makeup compact kit or something, but it has 2 cartridges. You can have your THC in one and you can have your flavored vape product in the other. So 2 separate cartridges. So those are some of the products that you may see youth have in their pockets or in their backpacks or at home. Dripping. Dripping is putting the e-liquid directly onto the hot coils of the device for thicker smoke. I don't know if you've ever been parked at a red light and you see this big white cloud come out of the car in front of you. That's what they're doing, they're dripping. And they do this for more flavor. They do it for a stronger throat hit. They like that strong, harsh hit. And to be cool to see who can blow the thickest cloud. And this is how they do it. You see, this is one of those mods I was talking about. And they take these cotton, they buy bags of cotton and they roll them up and stick them inside the coil. And then they soak the coil and the cotton with the drip, with the vape juice, and put it back together. And that's when they have those big clouds. Very dangerous, as in health-wise, because this is heating up at high temperatures. So you're getting some of those particles of metal, nickel, tin in that vape product. This is a marijuana vaporizer. This one here is just like that I Quit Ordinary Cigarettes, where you actually put the marijuana leaf, the buds, directly in this tube. So it's not an oil. And then you push the button and it looks just like a inhaler for somebody with asthma. So you put the marijuana leaf in here and it heats it up until it vaporizes and it doesn't burn. Whenever you see these tools here, if everybody heard of the dab, you know, the dab. So the dab is, this is the dabber. So if you have one of those e-cigarettes, so your kid has an e-cigarette and it comes with this tool, the dab here, that's where you take the marijuana oils, put it on the dabber, and then you put it onto the coils of your e-cigarette. So whenever you see tools inside that e-cigarette, you know they're smoking marijuana with it. So let's talk about what's in the vapor. Or is it vapor? Vapor versus aerosol. Vapor is 100% liquid, right? Like a tea kettle. You boil water and it creates a vapor. But a vape product is actually aerosol. Aerosol is tiny particles in that vapor. So they have little pieces of solid bits of particles is aerosol. Just like the aerosol we spray as deodorant, there's particles in there. It's not just water. And some of the particles you see here, that is carcinogens, known carcinogens, and you can see some of them there, cadmium and formaldehyde and lead and nickel. Nicotine is in there, right? So whenever nicotine is in there, that's highly addictive, and that's that addictive part where the kids are getting hooked on it very quickly. And some of these products, you will see, where else do you find these products? Nickel is in batteries. Phenol is in aerosols and pesticides. Benzene. Rubidium is what makes the color of the fireworks. So if anything you want to tinge pink or red or bluish. Formaldehyde, what you find in nail polish. And toluene is paint thinner. Isoprene. Propylene glycol. Everybody's like, vape juice is just propylene glycol. Well, there's propylene glycol in antifreeze. And we'll get into propylene glycol and the other vegetable glycerin, where vape stores are like, oh, it's just glycerin or glycol. It's not harmful. And we'll get into that in a moment. But acetone, candamine, which is in paints. So these products are also in the vape juice. Now there was a lung disease, irreversible, life-threatening lung disease that was happening to a lot of people. And they called it popcorn lung because there was a factory that was making microwave popcorn. And the chemical responsible for the buttery flavor of the popcorn, called diacetyl, was in the vape juice for flavoring or for color, whatever reason they had it in there. But a lot of people in that factory were coming down with this lung disease that they popularly named popcorn lung. And that was the first types of diseases that were showing up with vaping in our vape products. So the popcorn, the diacetyl is okay to eat on our popcorn. We can ingest it and digest it, but we can't have it vaporized into our lungs. Secondhand dangers, just like cigarettes, vaping has secondhand dangers. And actually, you see third-hand dangers here. So when we exhale, we're exhaling that aerosol, and it's not harmless. It contains nicotine, carcinogens, and particles. So third-hand dangers of smoking, either combustible cigarettes, but of course, vaping products also, that the aerosolized particles collect and penetrate exposed surfaces. So your couches, your floors, your countertops, your kids' toys, that aerosolized particles are dropping down. So if the kid is crawling on the floor, touching the other things, it's on our clothes, on our couches. So there is third-hand dangers of smoking. Now, nicotine, you see nicotine is an acute toxin. Liquid nicotine, if swallowed, can be absorbed or be absorbed through the skin, and it's very dangerous. So just a few drops of liquid nicotine could result in a trip to the ER. And you'll see some of the signs and symptoms over here on the right. Increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, seizures, death, nausea, vomiting. So the lethality depends on the weight of the child or the concentration of the liquid nicotine. And you see on the bottom left, ingesting less than 1/4 teaspoon of 1.8% concentrate nicotine could be fatal to a 50-pound child. So if you have your vape juice sitting around on the counters or in the basement or wherever they're keeping it, or they just spill it on their skin, it is a toxin and it has to be handled and locked up. And you see this chart of electronic cigarette and liquid nicotine cases from the poison control, right? E-cigarettes came out in like 2010, 11, but they were not refillable and stuff. They were those disposable, right? So once the 3rd generation and 4th generation came out, probably along these years of 2014, 15, you can see how many more visits or calls from the poison control they received. And this is from the CDC. And I did this presentation in 2020 that just started, just 3 months in 2020, they already had nearly 1,000 calls of nicotine poisoning cases. Vaping health risks. ENDS, remember ENDS is electronic nicotine delivery. I'm sorry, what was that ENDS? Electronic nicotine delivery systems. They were thought to be a healthier alternative than cigarettes, but recent evidence shows otherwise. So vaping can lead to increased risk of cardiac arrest and possibly cardiac death. And you see that's from the Journal of American Heart Association. Nicotine stimulates the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response. And in doing so, blood pressure rises and heart rate increases. Increased nicotine use triggers addiction, weakens the immune system, damages the gums and mouth. I was just watching some videos on a gentleman because I was wondering how to drip. Remember that dripping, blowing those big thick smoke? And he would do it. And when he blew it out his mouth and his nose, that he kind of liked it. He says he doesn't blow it out his nose too often because he gets sores in his nose if he blows out that vape product out of his nose. Flavorings were linked to lung disease, and they did ban. I remember back in 2019 or 20, they did ban the flavors, but then they banned the ban on the flavors. If anybody remembers that, they banned the flavors, but then manufacturing complained, and I guess Congress got scared, and then they put a ban on the flavors. But they did ban some flavors. They kept a couple. Menthol. So there are still some flavors out there. And the secondhand vapor is also dangerous. So when the immune system is faced with inflammation, it will attack the foreign bodies. When smoke-like or vaporous substance enters the lungs, the body only recognizes that as a foreign object, and they come and try to wash it out. And that's when we heard these people dying of that lung disease. There's actually somebody, a youth, 18 years old or 17 years old in Grosse Pointe, who had a double lung transplant. And there's thousands and thousands of people dying a year. I think it was up to 2,800 youth died from that lung disease. And they did track it down to vitamin E acetate, if anybody remembered that. And they were finding it in the TH vape product. So vitamin E is fine for putting on your skin and ingesting it for our bodies, but it is an oil. So once that oil vaporizes into the lungs, it goes into the lungs, attaches to our lungs, and turns into an oil again. And then just like that bottom paragraph says, the lungs feel that as an intruder, and then it tries to flush it out with fluid. So it sends all this fluid to that part of that lung to flush out that foreign object. And that's what the kids were dying of. You'll see the X-ray of that lung, and it looked like a ghost inside there because that was all fluid that it was picking up. So the symptoms of this lung disease, excuse me, left my water in the other room. Cough, shortness of breath, chest pain, nausea, vomiting, fever. Kind of sounds like COVID a little bit. Some of the same symptoms. So you see the CDC recommends seeing a medical provider right away if you have any of those symptoms. Who knows? It could be COVID, it could be the lung disease. They did take the vitamin E acetate out of those products, and everybody's aware that the vitamin E acetate was the culprit that was creating a lot of this lung disease. But that's just one of the culprits. There's other carcinogens in that vape product And I kind of skipped over this. I must have hid the slide that a vape product that'll either be PG, which is propylene glycol, and this is what's used in antifreeze. It's a liquid alcohol. And the other form of vape juice is VG, which is vegetable glycerin. This is like coconut, palm, soy oils and stuff. It's derived from those plants. And they're used in keeping things moist, keeping our food, our medicine, pesticides, plastics, they're used in those products. They're used in skincare products, soap, gels, acne treatments, replaces alcohol in tinctures. So when they say it's just vegetable glycerin or propylene glycol, those are still dangerous products that have other ingredients in them. You can also submit a detailed report if you suspect any health or product issues with a tobacco product. You can call the FDA and report that. You can go online and report it to the safety reporting portal. And recovery is possible. You can recover from nicotine addiction, even if past attempts have been unsuccessful. There's the Quit Now line that you can call, the 800 line. Chat with a specialist online or download the Quit Guide, smokefree.gov. This is for youth, specialized for youth under 18 years old, mylifemyquit.com. I've heard a lot about that in the past. I don't know if it's working as well as they wanted it to. I don't know if teens are into it anymore, but they have other products or other ways. The Truth Initiative, this is quitting texting. So you can text quit and then you'll have this, they'll kind of remind you and send you healthy messages on your texting device. When people, some of the vape pens or the vape products, they have a puff counter. So if you're lowering the nicotine in that vape product, remember I said you'll probably just puff on it more and more because you want that level of nicotine your brain's used to. But if there's a puff counter on there and you lower the nicotine and you only puff it a certain amount of times through the day and you keep lowering the nicotine, that could wean you off of that product if you're using it properly. But the FDA didn't approve vape products to quit at all. These are the FDA approved nicotine cessation products. The skin patches have been very successful. The chewing gum and the lozenges, the Chantix, Zyban. So these prescriptions and things that you can get from the store, the I don't know if the lozenges and the chewing gum you can get over the counter or you need that, but these are the proven cessation tools. Once they show that there's some data representing that vape products can get you off of combustible cigarettes, that might be approved in the future. Although that risk of people smoking for 30 years and then getting ill rather than people smoking for a few months and getting ill. So saying that vape products are healthier or safer or less harmful, all three of those don't meet what the research is talking about. And all of this information and data has come from these reputable sources of the National Institute of Drug Abuse and the CDC and the FDA and SAMHSA, which is Substance Abuse Mental Health Services. We do have a product at CARE, or a program at CARE called In-Depth. In-Depth is a, it's a 4-week program for kids that are addicted to nicotine. They meet for a 50-minute session for 4 weeks to help them get off of nicotine. We just started that program within the last few months. So anybody that knows a youth addicted that wants to quit, and a lot of youth are addicted, they want to quit. And they do say how difficult it is to quit smoking. Think of all the adults that been trying to quit for a decade. Youth want to quit too, some. And there are ways that they can get support and quit. All right, folks.
Joe, are pipe smoking and cigar smoking equally as harmful as cigarettes? Because they always say that, you know, well, when you smoke a cigar or a pipe, you don't inhale or something like that.
Yeah, well, I heard some people that, yeah, they hold the smoke in their mouth a little bit and get the flavor, and they don't. But then you have that mouth cancer and you have the sores, just like chewing tobacco, right? They think it's safer because they're not getting the tar and nicotine, or the tar. They're getting the nicotine in their blood, but they're not getting the tar in their lungs and the carcinogens. But then they get sores on their gums and their teeth. So, yeah, there is no safe tobacco product, but I don't know the level of nicotine in the pipes and in cigars. But even what is that? Hookah? Is it called hookah?
Yeah.
Yeah, and those were, you know, it is cultural and families did it. It's a cultural thing, but it's just as dangerous as a cigarette. So they really have to be aware, just because it's cultural or kind of in our history, that it is dangerous. The only safe thing you should be putting into your lungs is the air that we are breathing.
Agreed.
Any carcinogens, any vapor that you're putting into your lungs, our lungs aren't designed for that. They're just to filter carbon dioxide and oxygen. Wow,
good deal. Do you guys have any questions that you want to put in the chat, or if you want me to unmute you to verbalize, raise your hand, and I'm more than happy to. Okay, no questions, no comments. Well then, with that being said, we are going to close. Excellent presentation, Joe, Teresa. Again, I personally cannot, I don't think this is a topic that you can oversaturate. It's just never enough said to me, because every time I hear a presentation on it, I learn so much more. You know, I get so many, I get such a better understanding, better understanding of what's going on here, what's taking place. And it just truly is mind-blowing, you know. The fact that they are targeting our youth specifically by creating products that are flavorful, because when you add that sugar and that flavor in it, it kind of, you know, takes the negativity out of it, because you're like, oh, it's sweet, it's good, you know, it can't be harmful, but indeed it is. And
yeah, the tobacco industry needs replacement smokers. They have a product that knows, proven to kill people, and a lot of adults are quitting. So they're like, what can we do? We need replacement smokers. And
wow, oh my God.
Vaping is it. Get them hooked on nicotine. They'll even go from the vape product to the tobacco combustible product, because there's nothing more pure than free-base nicotine, which is the combustible cigarette.
Wow. Well, thank you guys. Great, excellent presentation. Thank you guys for joining. You guys have a great day. We will all see you Thursday when we will be talking about FASD, which is fetal alcohol disorder syndrome. I got it right. Everybody have a great day and thanks for joining.
Thank you, Tony.